Oh boy, here we go again. I think regardless of the side that you're on, the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix ended in somewhat controversial circumstances. So much so that this pointless war between fans of #Blessed and the Dutch Messiah continue even 18 months on. So much so that I was very tempted to change this video's title to "Is Lewis Hamilton about to lose another of his titles?" before deciding I quite like having 61,000 subscribers. Fact of the matter is, that's not what this video is about anyway. 2021 wasn't the first time a championship ended in hot debate, and likely won't be the last. But an interview this week from everyone's favourite rotting corpse, Bernie Ecclestone, may have brought another year's championship standings into disrepute. Those from #Blessed's first driver's title in 2008. News broke on Tuesday that ex-Ferrari driver Felipe Massa is considering legal action to try and take that championship back, a whole 15 years since one of F1's greatest finishes in Brazil. Hamilton came into that race with a 7-point lead in the standings. That might not seem like much by today's standards, but this was an era where points were harder to come by than a Minecraft YouTuber that doesn't like kids. The story of that race frankly deserves its own video, but long story short, when Massa crossed the line in first, Lewis was only 6th, making the Brazilian World Drivers' Champion. Hamilton still had a couple of corners to navigate, however, as did the Toyota of Timo Glock, who had taken the gamble of sticking on dry tyres despite the Sao Paulo circuit looking like a lake by this stage. At the final corner of the final race, Hamilton passed Glock for 5th, claiming the championship by one sole point, and causing the Tifosi to consider taking their very own Glock and shoot themselves in the head with it. With such a tight finish to a season, everyone began to look back at the tiny little things Massa could have done differently to claim back that oh-so-crucial championship point. And as far as the Brazilian was concerned, there really wasn't much. He'd driven a phenomenal year. The team, on the other hand, well, we're talking about Ferrari, so what exactly do you expect? Massa's late retirement with 3 laps to go in Hungary stands out, but the team's biggest Ferrari moment of the year came at Singapore. It was the country's first ever Grand Prix, and the Brazilian was storming away in the lead, until the Renault of Nelson Piquet Jr. got bored after 14 laps, and thus decided to slam his car into the barrier. This incident brought out the safety car, and a flurry of pit stops, including the Ferrari of Massa. He pulled away, only to notice that he'd taken on an extra passenger in the form of the fuel hose, which was still stuck on the side of the car. And to note, this is where I would place the Benny Hill theme, but YouTube keeps claiming it, so you'll just have to imagine it's here instead. Anyway, Felipe's day got worse when his Ferrari engineers clearly hadn't had their Weetabix that morning, failing to remove the hose from Massa's car as he plummeted to the rear of the field. Rather unsurprisingly, Massa would take 0 points away from the weekend, with Hamilton securing a crucial P3, and come the end of the season, enough points to overhaul the Brazilian in the standings. So Ferrari cocked up. Big surprise, poor Massa. But why does that bring Hamilton's championship into potential jeopardy? Well, you see, Ferrari should never have been in that pit lane to begin with. Fast forward about a year later, and Renault were rather fed up with Nelson Piquet Jr., deciding a change was in order, and promptly hiring Romain Grosjean of all people instead. That didn't impress the Brazilian much, who chose to out the Renault team following his sacking, claiming that he'd been asked to crash in Singapore on purpose, an action which eventually led to Alonso taking the team's first win of the season. Aptly named Crashgate, the drama saw Renault receive a 2-year suspended ban from the sport, and top figures in the team receive harsh penalties as well. Though interestingly, despite the results of the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix being fixed, the team and Alonso were allowed to keep their win. This didn't impress the likes of Felipe Massa, who tried to have the race result voided, thus removing Hamilton's P3 finish and making him the 2008 world champion as a result. Now, how did the FIA and F1 respond to this? Well, they told him just to go do one. I imagine in slightly nicer words than that. Then again, this is Bernie we're talking about. Their argument was that the sporting code, written and supposedly followed by the FIA, states that the championship's results are set in stone and can't be changed after that year's prize-giving ceremony. Given all this came out a year after that, nothing could be done. And that's where the issue remained right until this week, where we learned from Bernie Ecclestone but that's not quite the full story. Bernie was quoted as saying that he knew of Crashgate during the 2008 season. Nelson Piquet Sr. had supposedly reported what had happened to then race director Charlie Whiting following the season finale in Brazil. Ecclestone went on to say that he wanted to protect the sport and save it from a huge scandal, which sure worked out pretty well, didn't it? The F1 boss thus convinced the PKs to keep quiet on the ordeal until Nelson Jr. was fired and they took matters into their own hands. So how does this change anything? Well, if it is true that F1 were aware of the high-profile cheating scandal during the 2008 season, then the FIA Code of Conduct is about as relevant as Shane Dawson right now. The results of that race could theoretically be overturned, and Lewis Hamilton, as a result, could have his first ever title stripped from him. Upon hearing this, Team LH have been up in arms and incredibly confused. The idea that Ferrari could win a world title clearly too much for their feeble, undeveloped minds to handle. The question is, will this really happen though? And your short answer, no, it won't. Now, should it happen? Well, that's a lot harder to call. It's not as if Hamilton was the evil mastermind behind this all, though I'm sure someone in the depths of Twitter has tried to claim that by now. He benefited from a situation that he had no control over, so it's difficult to strip him of his title due to someone else's wrongdoing. And before the Verstappen fans pounce on this video as British bias, let's just remember that it's that same argument we can use to defend Verstappen for what happened in 2021. He wasn't the one that was sat in the race director's seat, he only benefited from the decisions Massa made that day. I think that's about as neutral as I can be about it. Going back to 2008, even Alonso was allowed to keep his win, after investigators deduced that he had no part in events. Though this is Alonso we're on about, and I somehow struggle to believe that. But let's go back to that first question. Will it happen? And it's a fair one to ask. Look at what happened when Lance Armstrong was accused of being a little bit naughty with his pre-race snacks. He had all of his credits taken away from him. So why don't I see this happening here in Formula 1? Well, it comes down to the can of worms that opens up if Massa gets that 2008 championship. All of a sudden, that FIA sporting code might as well be put through a meat grinder, and people will start questioning why Abu Dhabi's results can't be adjusted as well. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a debate I, along with the FIA and every sane person on the planet, got rather sick and tired of after the first week of it. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this one though. Do you think Massa deserves his title? Equally, do you think it's fair for Lewis to lose one out of events he had no part in? And what are your thoughts on Abu Dhabi 2021? Actually, on second thoughts, keep those last ones to yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video though, and that it's cleared things up a little bit after a rather busy week in the F1 news circles. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop this video a thumbs up and get subscribed for all of the filler content I have in store ahead of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, which is way too many weeks away. A huge thank you to all of the channel members and patrons as well for your continued support, and if you want to get involved in supporting me and the channel, then all you have to do is check out the links down in the description below. For now though, that's all from me, so I'll see you soon with another video, but until then, have a good one.